Second grade learners and other learners. Today we start our Read Aloud series for Domain 3, Ancient Greek Civilizations from Engage, New York. In this video we will be doing read alouds for Read Aloud 1 and Read Aloud 2. So be sure to pause the video or fast forward through the video until you see this nice big circle again to know we're starting the next read aloud. Now remember, in class we do vocabulary and comprehension questions that go with each of these read alouds. And so if you need any of those things at home, just send me a message so that I know to send those home with you or get them to you. All right, let's get started on ancient Greece. By far one of my favorite topics. All right, so here we have a map of ancient Greece. And we have already learned about ancient Asia and the Indus River Valley, which is nowadays India. So about 2,800 years ago, there lived a civilization of people called the ancient Greeks. Today, we call part of the area where this ancient civilization lived the country of Greece. Long ago, however, the ancient Greeks lived on a much larger area of land. The boundaries of ancient Greece spread widely to the east and west into many areas bordering on the Black Sea to the north and across hundreds of islands in the Mediterranean and Aegean seas. A great way to remember this is BAM, B-A-M, Black Sea, Aegean Sea, and Mediterranean Sea. Those are the three seas around Greece. Okay, bam. Expeditions by land and by ship allowed the Greeks to travel as far west as present-day Britain and as far east as India. The ancient Greeks traveled to explore far-off lands and also to trade or buy and sell goods with people from other lands. The ancient Greeks were similar to other ancient civilizations in some ways. They had writing systems, leaders and laws, religions, and different people to do different jobs. And all of these ancient civilizations, the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Indians, Chinese, Maya, Inca, Aztecs, and Greeks, discovered ways to design and build magnificent structures that can still be seen today. You will see some pictures of these structures in a later lesson. All right. In ancient Greece, however, were also different from other ancient civilizations in many important ways. Unlike the Egyptians and Mesopotamians, the Greeks did not develop around a great river like the Nile in Egypt or the Tigris and Euphrates near Babylon. The Greek land was not as fertile as the land near those wide flooding rivers. Greece is a land of high, rugged mountains, and in many parts, farming for the ancient Greeks was a struggle. You are going to hear about one type of hardy tree, however, that the ancient Greeks were able to grow in abundance. In addition to being farmers, some Greeks were also shepherds who took care of sheep on this rugged land. Some Greeks built harbors near the Black Aegean and Mediterranean Sea, and many became expert sailors and fishermen using boats like the one in this image right here. The largest island in the Mediterranean Sea was known and is still known today as Crete. Because they were surrounded by water, the ancient Greeks on the island of Crete became especially skilled seafarers, a name for people who earn a living by working at sea, such as fishermen and sailors. All right, so seafarers is the word that describes people earning a living by working at sea. The high Greek mountains also made a difference in the way ancient Greece was ruled. Because the mountains split Greece into a lot of little valleys, it was very difficult to move from place to place. Many Greeks stayed in one place and married people from the same community. Each city in each valley became its own little nation, which we refer to today as a city-state. Each city-state had its own government and its own laws, which controlled the surrounding area. All the Greek city-states shared the same language, although each city-state had different dialects or slightly different ways of speaking the language. Sometimes the Greeks had the same ideas of how to live their lives, but they did those things independently of one another. In fact, the ancient Greeks were highly competitive, and only in an emergency would they work together. After each emergency, each city-state would go back to independently minding its own business. People in each city-state thought of themselves less as united Greeks and more as citizens of their particular city-state. The ancient Greeks looked at the world around them very differently from the way other people of their time looked at things. For example, you are going to hear the story of how one city-state decided not to have a king anymore. Not only was this different from what other Greeks were doing, it was completely different from what the Mesopotamians and Egyptians had done before, and from what the Aztecs, Inca, and other civilizations would do in the future. You will hear more about this later. For now, all I will say is that the Greeks had a unique way of seeing and thinking about things. We have a lot of exciting adventures ahead of us as we learn about the unique way the ancient Greeks lived and thought about things, and how their many contributions are a part of our lives today. All right, so that is the end of Read Aloud number 1, just an introduction to ancient Greek civilizations. And so we are about to start Read Aloud number 2. So if this was the only read aloud you need, you're free to stop it here. If not, we are going to continue to read aloud number 2, where we are going to begin our discussion of Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus was a very important place for the ancient Greeks, and it is actually a landmark you can visit today. Kind of neat. So if you're continuing on, let's get started. Remember to request any comprehension questions, discussion questions, or vocabulary words that we've done in class. All right, here we go. Okay. Here, this is an image back here of Mount Olympus, and it can be visited today. All right, let's begin our story. The day began delightfully, of course. Every day began delightfully on Mount Olympus, for it was the home of the gods. Because these gods called Mount Olympus their home, they were called the Olympian gods. Sometimes they enjoyed roaming on Earth, which is where the gods could be found at this moment, all except Hermes and Apollo. So in this image, here is Hermes, and sitting down here is Apollo. Right. Hermes, the messenger of the gods and son of Zeus, appeared in an instant at the side of his brother Apollo. Hermes was wearing his famous winged sandals and winged helmet, and he carried a small wooden stick or baton with wings on either side. All of these extra wings gave Hermes even greater speed than he already possessed. Because he was constantly flitting here and there, carrying news among the gods and leading lost travelers back in the right direction, Hermes needed all the speed he could get. When he was moving his fastest, it always seemed as if, whoosh, he just appeared out of nowhere. Apollo, over here, the god of music and poetry, was startled when Hermes suddenly appeared. Even though he should have been used to it by now, "Do you have to pop up like that?" he protested. "I was just composing the most wonderful song on my harp, and you have made me forget where I was in the melody." "So sorry," said Hermes, although he was secretly pleased, for he was a bit of a trickster. Hermes went on, "But soon you will have more of an audience, for our father Zeus has summoned us all here to the great hall at once." Glancing around nervously, he added quietly, "And you know how he can be when he is kept waiting." Hermes looked at the harp he had given to Apollo long ago, made from the shell of a large tortoise with strings stretched across it. "Still, I can stay for a moment if you would be kind enough to play whatever you were working on." He sat down on a thick cushion on the floor. Apollo smiled. And because he was also the god of light, his smile could truly light up a room. "I would be delighted," he said, and his fingers ran so swiftly across the harp strings that they seemed almost liquid. As always, the song was so beautiful that anyone listening would think it must be the best song that could ever be played. That is, until Apollo played the next one. Hermes actually sat unmoving, which was quite rare for him, and at the end of the song he sighed. Then he was gone, his parting thank you hanging in the air. Apollo thought, that boy must learn to slow down. Hermes had already left behind the high cloud-covered mountain and was settling down into a lush green forest below. Here, Hermes was especially alert, for he was searching for the greatest of hunters, or rather, huntresses, his sister, the goddess Artemis. If anything could travel as quickly as Hermes, it would be one of Artemis's arrows, for she was the goddess of hunting, wilderness, and animals. Hermes could hear the crashing and crackling of branches as something large broke through the trees nearby. Suddenly, a great antlered stag burst from the bushes not 5 feet from Hermes, panic in its eyes as it saw him. Turning, the stag disappeared from the little clearing as suddenly as it had arrived. Hermes had only enough time to think, how graceful, when 2 huge hounds leapt from the bushes, ready to follow the stag. Hermes simply held up his wooden baton, and the 2 dogs stopped at once, laying down before him, panting. A moment later, their mistress Artemis appeared. Disappointment showed on the goddess's face at losing the deer she had been hunting. At such moments, Artemis could be cruel, but when she saw Hermes, she smiled, for she was very fond of him. "I wondered why the hounds had stopped," she said. "I am afraid that you will have to stop also," Hermes replied. "Our father has summoned us to Mount Olympus as quickly as possible." At once, Artemis placed the arrow she had been holding into the quiver she wore over her shoulder. "I will leave right away," she said. But as Hermes flew off again, he saw her looking longingly at the bushes where the deer had disappeared. A minute later, the messenger god hovered mid-air, high above the sea that surrounded Greece and which held hundreds of islands of all sizes. With eyes as sharp as one of Artemis's arrows, Hermes shot through the ocean waves. Weaving among a dozen dancing dolphins, he came to rest next to the massive shoulders of his uncle, Poseidon, the god of the seas and all that crosses the seas. Poseidon's long white beard moved like sea foam in the water as he turned and spoke. "Hermes, you are welcome here," he boomed out in a mighty voice, and Hermes remembered that Poseidon, brother of Zeus, could make the earth shake, for he was also the god of earthquakes. Pointing his great trident, a 3-pointed pitchfork, which he sometimes used to stir up the waves of the sea god said to Hermes, "Watch with me." So the 2 gods watched as the dolphins swam in smooth, wide figure eights, and massive whales rose up from the depths to swim through the loops of the dolphins' designs. When the show was over, 100 octopi jetted in front of the whales and dolphins, shooting black ink from their bellies as a sort of closing theater curtain to end the performance. Poseidon roared with laughter at this surprise ending. Then, turning to Hermes, he asked, "What brings you here, nephew?" Hermes replied, "Zeus asks you to come with all speed to Mount Olympus." "I shall go at once," he said. But before he set out to see his brother, Poseidon took the time to thank the dolphins, whale, and octopi for their performance. When he finished, Hermes was already gone. "It is wonderful how he does that," Poseidon thought. In the sky high above him, Hermes was already seeking out another of the gods. Suddenly, a lightning bolt split the air only 10 feet from the messenger god. This was followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Zeus was getting impatient. Hermes called upward, "I'm moving as quickly as I can." The messenger of the gods hurried on his way. So we are going to pause that read aloud, and we will finish the rest of it another day. There are many more gods that Hermes needs to summon for Zeus to meet on Mount Olympus. So that is the end of the first two read alouds of Engage New York, Domain 3 on the ancient Greek civilization. So again, if you need any of the comprehension questions, discussion questions of vocabulary words to work on at home, please get in touch with me so I can send them along. All right, have a great day and come back soon.